I think it's 2 minutes after, and a few hours ago, Don and I just did a quick walkthrough of his section, and that took over almost an hour, so there's a lot we could talk about, so feel free to come up to us afterwards and ask additional questions, but we're going to do our best to stick to the schedule and get rolling. So I made an agenda because all good meetings have agendas. You will never see this slide again. Memorize it now. We're going to work through, so this is what we put in as our synopsis. We're here to talk about specifically how OSU, how their AV group works with their capital planning. You might call it large projects. You might have a different name for it, but the people on your campus who build buildings and make all of those decisions without you or with you, we're going to learn about how their relationship works, how they got here, some of the things they've learned. Some of it won't apply, some of it will, but I'm hopeful, as with a lot of things at this conference, right? The way the different groups do it, there's something to learn from everybody. And so I'm really excited to hear how they're working together. Safety moment. Hi, I'm from Stantec. I'm a consultant. We start meetings with safety moments because a fifth of our company pulls oil out of the ground, and that's super dangerous. So the consultants have to do safety moments. My safety moment at conferences is always the same. Raise your hand if you go to more than 10 conferences a year, right? None of us are professional conference goers, even though we all attend conferences. So you're not in your element, you're not in your routine. Take care of yourself. You might need a little more sleep, a little more water, a little more caffeine, or a little less caffeine. Whatever it is, take a moment. You're not in your routine. Take care of yourself so you can enjoy and get the most out of your conference. Let's introduce our panel. In the middle is Libby Ramirez. She is the OSU campus architect. She makes a bunch of the decisions about how the buildings get built and what goes in and what doesn't go in, and a plethora of other things. She is joined by Dustin, one of her project managers. Again, everyone from OSU. Someone who keeps things on budget and on schedule as best he can, hell or high water. And then they are joined by Don Mello, Associate Director of Academic Technologies here at Oregon State University. Oh yeah, that's me. I'm me. My mom says I'm really good looking, and my mom doesn't know how to lie. I'm a consultant. So they talked about that at the last session. Sometimes consultants are part of these larger projects. Sometimes they are not. It depends on the university and their methodology. Robert was supposed to join us. I don't know where he is. If you see this man, make fun of him and get some $met from him. He owes you for not being here. All right, trying to burn through this. I want to start with the OSU story. Ooh. And then please speak into the microphone, as I'm not speaking into the microphone, just so it gets recorded.
I'm not sure how to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking. All right.
Take it away.
I'm taking it. All right. So, yeah, I promised I'd keep it at 12 minutes. I saw 13 up there. Another 60 seconds. I'm just
You have a second section.
So first and foremost, we're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. We still learn. There's bumps. There's roadblocks. There's hurdles. It's how you get through them. I'd like to lead off as the Associate Director of Academic Technologies at the classrooms. First and foremost, I don't own anything. So you won't hear me say my, ours, mine, university. My team is the steward for these spaces on campus. And that's the avenue I go with. And that parlays into other things I don't want to get too deep, but departmental spaces, same thing. We don't own them. So how we got started with all of this, I got on board here, and everyone, TV classrooms, distance education, right? That's how it all started. And then they quickly expanded up a few more rooms, about 30 altogether. When I came on board, they wanted to update those TV classrooms, and they wanted to add some more rooms. Well, that segued into something else. The demand was going up for rooms. We were delivering like crazy across campus. So the CIO, we all have CIOs. They made a declaration, they made a decision, they got money to outfit 83 rooms in one summer. And so they came and said, can you do it? And I'm like, oh, sure, we can do that. Yeah, absolutely. So knowing some friends at Facility Services, which are part that they're with, we worked with two of their tradespeople, their carpenter and electrician leads, and they gave us employees for the summer to be ahead of us and do infrastructure for us. To me, that was our start. And I promised someone yesterday I wouldn't tell this story, but we got to Apperson Hall, 3rd floor. They got up in the ceiling, and they went, whoa, this is about to collapse. Now, I see that as a very critical point in our partnership because At that time, we were already doing work with some of their team members. I'm sure there was cooler talk. So when they decided to redo Apperson Hall, Greg Strombeck, at that time, said, Don, come on into this table here. Let's talk about your classrooms. I said, well, again, not mine, university classrooms. But I said, there's also some other classrooms as well. There's a department in this building. So we kind of started this collaboration, if you will. Our best practice with their best practice. And it's grown and evolved over time. They saw the work that we could do. They saw benefits from us being able to help them with owner-furnished, contractor installed, or owner-furnished, owner installed. The savings, the reliability, and the standard for the university. That's how it all started. Mr. Greg Strombeck. Remember that name? Yes. So, of course, you mentioned new buildings. They're in charge of also taking care of historic buildings that are renovated, as well as new projects. The second catalyst was OSU Cascades. We lost a bid to University of Oregon. We lost because we got it. So we have started a campus from the ground up. Again, the trust. Now it's a different team over there, but it's the same group in essence. So the trust was there. So since then, we've continued to do that. We are working with some integrators and consultants. Sometimes we don't. It depends on the project. We're all different. Every building is different. Every group is different. But the key is infrastructure. Infrastructure, infrastructure. Floor boxes, wall mounts, backing, conduit runs. That's how we all started. Let's get this right. The technologies, it's always going to change. But let's get the core infrastructure in place so we're not having to repeat this over and over, which costs money. Fair? I've known Libby for what, 20 years?
No, I've only been here for 10. So
10? We had kids that grew up in high school together, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Dustin was with Anderson when I first met you, a construction company. And the partnership was even, so it was nice. We have actually a contractor / project manager here. The key is, though, is communication and respect. And again, university property, university money, we're all university employees. And the communication is the biggest thing. We don't do anything with an outside contractor or a consultant without our friends at facilities, project manager, in the communication. That's the key. That's really it. I told you to get under 10. That's what I have. Where we're going in the future, who knows? But communication and pride in what you do. That's it.
That's a great start. So we're going to pass it on to, is Libby, are you going to go first or is Dustin going to go first? Great.
Libby, 10 years.
So,
it's been longer than 10 years.
no, it's been 10.
Again, Libby, campus architect, big decider on what, how these buildings, what goes in these buildings, the size and shape of those buildings. It's called massing, like how many of this kind of room versus this other kind of room. A lot of those big decisions, right? Those show up when you get involved in the project, whether you get involved when the door opens or, at the dawn level. Libby?
Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I don't do the Vanna White thing. We'll just have a conversation. So y'all are experts in what you do. Don is an expert in what he does. I mean, Josh, you're an expert in what you do. My background's in architecture. I am not an expert in any kind of technology, any kind of IT. So why would I rely on my own opinion or my own lack thereof expertise? So I find that it's very important that I involve all of our partners on campus early on in developing budgets for projects and the scope of services for projects. And I think what you are all seeing wherever you all come from is that the need for technology that is maintainable, refreshable. I hear state of the art from all of our PIs, from all of our deans all the time. But state of the art at the time that I'm developing a project budget is out of date by the time we even start designing, and then it's really out of date by the time we even break ground, and then it's really out of date by the time we install. So if I don't have Don sitting at the table with me at the very beginning of the thought process of a project, then I've started the project in the wrong direction already. And I appreciate what our partners at UIT are saying, you know, in our approach to projects, pride of work, but also the fact that every space on our campus is an asset that belongs to the university. We're working really hard to get all of our academic partners to see things that way. That, you know, there's a long history of this is my office, this is my space, this is my departmental classroom, therefore you shall not touch it. But we're really working hard to understand that asset management is very important. Therefore, how we spend our money and how we are fiscally responsible to not only our campus community, but specifically to our students. So it's in my best interest to have all of our partners, whether they're in facility services or they're in UIT, in my court, understanding the scope of the work at the very beginning when I'm developing a budget and a scope. And then as things change, making sure that they're always at the table so that as my budget needs to tweak or the size of the room needs to tweak or, you know, anything needs to change, it's just very important that we have that relationship. And then we have you know, the unique scenario here where you do all of the, you know, you don't do the infrastructure installation, but you do the final installation. And so making sure that they're at the table with our contractors as well, just so that our end product is a success and then again, maintainable. So you know, I think that's just kind of the reason why we felt that this partnership from a long time going back is so very important. Once I've developed a project and kind of got it figured out where it's going to go, when it's going to be built, get the group of people together and start the programming, then I start working with our project management team. And
hey, Libby, who are some of those people who get to decide the programming?
Oh, that varies. Oftentimes it's you know, the deans feel that they get to decide, or the end user gets to decide what is the program of a project. But we have
oh, I'm sorry. And the program is the narrative.
Yeah. Yes. Who is the end user? What are they going to be using? What is the end goal for the project? Is it a state-of-the-art forestry building that's built out of mass timber that educates our students about the, you know, forestry education? Is it the Hamon Collaborative Innovation Complex, where we don't even know the work that they're going to be doing in that, as long as it's towards Healthy Planet, and we don't know who's going to be in the building? I mean, that's where you get into a place where you're really relying on your partners and the end users to help you kind of figure out what we'll be doing 10 years from now. So figuring out the scale of the project, is it an 80,000 square foot building? Is it a 150,000 square foot building? Is it full-on laboratory building? Is it $1,400 a square foot? We haven't seen anything for less than $800 a square foot in a long time. But so what is the actual scope of the project? What is the net to gross ratio, so that you understand how big your infrastructure needs to be to support whether it's a heavy lab building or a heavy data intensive building. So that's what we talk about with program and cost and budget.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's great. I oftentimes, I don't know if we're all talking on the same, because if I was attending one of your conversations, it would all go over my head. So stop me if I'm saying anything that goes beyond there. But then Dustin would take on the project, and I think then I'll turn it over. Is there another question that you wanted me to answer in the?
Not right now. Does anybody else have a question real quick while we're having a transition moment?
What's the timing for Dustin? At what point does he get involved?
It depends on the project. Dustin and I, in our most recent project together, which is the Hamon Collaborative Innovation Complex project, I was involved in some of the very early concepts about where should the building be, how big should the building be, what are the program elements that should go into the building. And then once we got through that programming and started schematic design, and this is a $213 million project, so having Dustin on board in that project early in schematic design is very important. Other projects, perhaps smaller projects, I might stay on a project a little bit longer, and depending on the timing and availability of our project and construction management team, just to help alleviate some of the stress of that early work. But his involvement in the project from very early on in the conversations, especially when we're talking about an extended reality theater that's in the building, where I think you'd be interested in some of the technology there. Having Dustin there at every site visit is very important. Very good question. Yeah.
You used an acronym I didn't know, PI.
I'm sorry, that is a principal investigator. So that's a faculty that individual that is doing heavy duty research. Yeah, thank you. Any other? Good? Okay.
We have more time for questions at the end. Fear not, it was a good moment.
Yeah, so
Dustin?
when Libby turns over the project, or I get folded in, the project manager gets folded in about early on in the SD, I kind of understand what's going on. I feel very confident at that time. I don't necessarily need Don's involvement at that day, but what Don has already done to set himself up for success is he has a lot of diagrams and details that are his kind of kit aparts of what he wants to see in either a small, medium, large conference room, whatever that piece is, where he wants 2 gangs over on this wall, he wants, you know, a single gang up high on each side for speaker mount. And we literally just take that package and we give it to our engineers and architects. Then they do whatever they do for their, 5-6 weeks, putting the first, maybe say the 50% complete SD set together. We get it, we review it, and then within the OSU community, we do a plan review where it goes out to everyone that should have a voice and say at that point and look at it. So it's our electricians, our plumbing shop, landscape, public safety, campus police, folks like that, which includes Don's group, so that they can look at it and go, yep, you got another B minus. That's really what our engineers get, is B minuses at that stage, because they maybe don't understand some of the specifics of why they're laying stuff out, because we're going to actually pull from here to there or whatever it is. Again, I know just enough to be dangerous with that. So then they go through, and we'll sit down and do a page turn with Don's group at that point. We won't do it for all of those folks. There's about 15 different groups within the university that get a shot at that. Some of them don't need that page turn, but it's really useful to have Don's group. So that's part of how he gets a seat at the table, I think is what our title was, is because he shows up to sit down at the table, right? So then we go through, he and Mark make some corrections to it, then it goes back into the design world. He goes back to his normal day job, 6-8 weeks lapses. These are kind of generic timelines. We get to the next major phase in DD where we're a lot more refined. We pass it to them again. They give comments back. We fold them into our design team. And I'll speak specifically about Cordley Hall, which is one of the larger projects. It's actually the largest project complete on campus right now. 230,000 square foot, $172 million renovation of a lab building. They went through all those steps. We bid the work out, contractor started, and then we'll see you in 18 months type of thing, right? And then the walls are getting finished. We haven't put drywall up, but our conduits are roughed in. We get Dawn and Mark out there in hard hats and safety vests, and we look at it one more time. Then they go away. We get close to completion. They're back. I think you've been back twice this year in Cordley to look at, okay, the gear that we've ordered from him is showing up at his receiving area. Let's go look at it one more time. He comes back out again. We just start looking at stuff, right? It makes sense in space. And then we're gonna actually start installing screens in the next week or two for a building we're gonna open up in June. And so the key there is having documents that you can hand to whoever the me is on your campus, that they can give it to the engineer so that they can at least start getting it close, getting it a C+ or a B- on that first try, and then just being willing to give us 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour nominally twice a year during the life of a large project. Nominally, a big project like Cordley I've been working on since 2016, and we're just finishing here in 2024. And really from, I'd say, 9 is 2 halves, so it's a little bit skewed, but really 2 times the first year when you're doing design, which takes nominally 12 months, and then 2 times towards the end. So yeah, that's kind of the timeline piece.
If you have Don's prepped package,
Yep.
the investment in the project can be pretty small, especially if things are going well. But if you're in a place where you haven't developed a Don package just yet, you might need a little more involvement, right, as part of learning. I think one of the things Mike showed in the last session was, while it's great to have a complete set, if you only have a third of it, you can give a third of it as a starting point, right? This is not complete, but we've done all the details for all the projection screens. We have more than projection screens in this project, but we've got this part done, right? Or we have this list of these standards, and if you only have part of it still helps. And part of it builds that relationship. And I'm sure, Don, as you've done yours, right, they probably change a little bit oh, we did this project, and we learned a few things. Make a few changes. Next batch for Dustin gets a little, right, it's an evolution.
Yeah.
Because our gear keeps changing, how we transport stuff keeps changing, what people want keeps changing, which is good. That's called job security. But part of that investment is the front-loaded work that Don's group has already done. Oh, I'm cutting into questions. Great, thank you.
So the document covers normalized spaces. When you get into custom or kind of the showpiece spaces, is that something that Don's group or consultants take on, or is that a group discussion?
Don's group definitely does, but I guess I was going to dovetail on what you were saying, that if you don't have those prepackaged documents for even the standard rooms, and this falls into the other pieces, I'm paying somebody a lot of money to do design for these buildings to get it right. They're willing to sit at a table, a consultant like Stantec or whoever you have, to talk through and work through those bugs. Here's what we've seen other places, here's what you do here, and yeah, really work through it together. Because on the Wong complex that Libby mentioned, my architecture fees is $14 million. Like, I have a lot of money invested in time for engineers to do work. I want you at the table helping me get the right conduits in the right places.
I'll pile on. And in the Huang complex in particular, where we have an extended reality theater, what's really important is that when we go as an end user with the principal investigators, to sit there and we, to go visit and look at camera locations and screens and the technology that's out there, then it's important that the architect and the design team are with us so they understand the infrastructure. But then it's also important that Don or Mark or somebody from UIT are with us so that it's maintainable and that there's nothing getting lost in translation. So that because the really sweet deal about having academic technology from the university that are typically working with our end users, they know how to translate the language between what the investigator wants, and then they can do the descramble in their brains and then say that to our design team or to the vendors that we're talking to. So we're making sure that we're all talking apples to apples at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll pile that as well. I start out with my segment saying base. So we have a base standard, if you will. Obviously, there are many different types of spaces that can be designed and developed. And some spaces we will take on, it's our bandwidth. Other spaces we will work with through their team, with design teams or integrators or consultants to kind of get the best thing going forward that we can, that Libby had said, that can be supportable, obviously. And sometimes if we have some experience, because we all get stuck in a rut sometimes, even I can get stuck in a rut. And maybe there's something that I've been doing that, hey, that's not the best piece of equipment, there's something that's better or something that's more reliable. So as long as we have that team collaboration going on, we can get to the best result so that the institution gets the best investment out of what they are purchasing.
Now, one of the things that we're currently doing, our 47-seat classroom building, is we are adding in our GrizzFlex, which requires these EIP microphones hung in the ceiling. And it was a late add-on, and working with our project manager, he's like, yeah, Doug, we can do it. We got the fund for it. We can do it. Great. Start ordering stuff. Stuff hasn't come up. We get a phone call from the construction crew, and they go, we got to start dropping in these ceilings. Where are your microphones? And we're like, oops. So for me, it's about me working with the project manager who's wants to do the right thing, wants to partner, wants to do everything to make this project a total success. It's about, we've learned about this now. So on the next project, these late add-ons and stuff, you have to realize they come at a cost.
It's called RFIs, which everyone knows what RFI stands for. I won't say it out loud what I call it, but anyway, I'll keep my mouth shut. A good point, and we talked about budgets, and Josh had asked me over lunch hour, what investment do we bring to this group here? And I thought it was a really good question you asked me. And I thought, you know, for us, it's I think we offer them professionalism, respect of what they're doing, and the best investment for the university. And trying to avoid those costly changes, because all changes cost money. They do happen, we understand that. They have contingency, but it's being respectful. Can we work with this and so forth? And another area I think we've helped them a great deal at. Nobody was impacted by the pandemic, right? None of your projects were stalled, right? Anybody have any major construction going on, new buildings during the pandemic? Were they completed on time? No. The construction was. So we couldn't deliver AV because of supply chain delays and other things, right? So their trust in us and what we could offer them is we can go into MSI at the time, and what was the other? Oh, PV, because we were halfway done with PV, our forestry building. We were able to go in and confirm infrastructure is properly in place. Everything the contractor was to deliver to us to make our job work and succeed is completed. Their trust in us knowing, okay, there's going to be no additional cost. We can let that contractor sign off and get off this project and not be burdened like, where is the AV? It was now on us. And I think we add that comfort because they know it's going to get done. We have a great relationship with the registrar, our schedule desk, and all the departments. And when that all happened, you bet I was on the phone talking to all those end users, to the registrar, being very honest with them. And this is my plan to go to the project management team. And I went to them and they were like, you know what, we can do this. So.
Yeah, just to understand your situation, it sounds like a lot of the projectors and speakers and stuff like that, you're actually installing in these new capital projects you're dealing with?
Not all, most spaces. I will say most. The trip to Prax today, all outside integration on this one over here. But based on they took our base standard and built that production facility based on that base standard. It's very complex. They did an amazing job. One of the best I've seen so far, honestly, from just walking in and going, this was built exactly how everyone said it was going to be built. It works exactly how they said it was going to be built. And I can cite a lot of hurdles and problems in the past, but this one, I'm just really impressed how they delivered that out there. So it depends on the project, but in most cases, we're doing it. Quarterly Hall, it's been all us.
If you don't mind the question, does his department get paid out of that capital project for that?
No. Right now, yeah, and that's the thing. So real quick, if I may, I'll get over the microphone. My department used to make me charge. I convinced them not to. Why are we double dipping? Why are we charging for? We're already here as employees. So at this time, we still don't. I can't say in the future if they'll let me keep doing that model, but at this time, no, we don't charge.
Yeah, the labor isn't charged, but all of the product is charged. Yeah.
That's fairly new. They started paying for general purpose classrooms, but departments are still on their own to pay for their equipment. So that is something most recently.
Can pass him the mic, just so it gets recorded.
That's something most recently, I would say within the past 4 or 5 years maybe, they were able to make that move within their budget. Because before that, our department would request funding to do the outfitting. But it's been nice because they realize it's an investment in the institution. It's part of the building.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it depends because there's some projects where Don's group doesn't do it, and quarterly there's 2 phases, west and east. And west was finished first. They did all the wiring from point A to point B. We gave them infrastructure. Since then, change of resources within their group.
Retirement.
My contractor is actually pulling all the wiring. And so Don's group and Mark specifically did a one-line wiring diagram for each room and each space. And so he invested in that, and then I paid for all the wiring out of my capital budget. And then depending on who owns the room, depends on who actually pays for the technology. So in that specific building, all the departmental spaces, those college and department levels budgets paid the whatever $200,000 total for this giant building. And then as the university representative, I paid for all the registrar university-owned spaces for the actual technology at the end.
So infrastructure is important, agreed, and with all new buildings we're getting great infrastructure, but we have a lot of old buildings that we're coming in and doing either capital project refreshes or even just our general pool refreshes where we're coming to redo equipment. Are you investing money in infrastructure to update those spaces at that time, or are you, how are you doing that both on the project side and then also on the space?
Yeah, I would completely, depending on like that Cordley project I just talked about, we gutted it down to the concrete decks and concrete shear walls and put in all new infrastructure. That's a little different. It's a huge project. I can kind of afford to add that in. But on even the smaller stuff, we try to. And you were mentioning about the microphones not being on time, and the contractor wanted tiles. That is a symptom that we try to take care of here. There's nothing I'm putting in today that I don't think I'm going to have to touch in 5 years. So I don't care what your model number is on this, that, or the other thing. I need to have infrastructure there that can be flexible to pull whatever cable you need, whatever is the new HDMI in 10 years from now or whatever. So I need to give you 2-inch conduits from point A to point B. We in fact just got in that Cordley job. I'm sorry, I'm like a broken record with this thing. My wife thinks I'm leaving for Cordley, but it's something different. We have a PI in there, Jane Lubachenko, who was in the Obama administration's lead scientist for his administration, and she's got a specialty room in there. We don't know what she's going to do. She can't tell us what she's going to do, but she thinks she's going to do some TV production video work. So Mark and I and Dawn, we literally put in hundreds of feet of extra conduit to different J-boxes, to 1 gang, 2 gangs, above the counter, below the counter, left, right, and we'll just put plates on them, right? And then we have a shot at being able to renovate that. So kind of moving forward with everything you do, we don't know what we're doing next, right? So.
I mean, I think what I could offer to help you, how many of you have a relationship with capital planning and development? Okay.
How many of you have a good relationship?
How many of you have a good relationship? Okay, good.
Not as many hands. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the reality of your situation.
I mean, I think if I were to give you some fodder to go back and have a, make a pitch for this, or have an argument about, maybe not an argument, but just make a stronger pitch for it, is right now I'm working on a project for UIT. Excuse me. And we're budget restrained, and I am able to sit down at the table and say, well, we're missing on the construction by about 50,000. Is there anything that we can, pull and push from the technology budget? Is there anything I can push and pull from the furniture budget? So we have a dialogue already, so my budget has more flexibility that way. And that has worked on almost every project that we've worked on. And I think that really the real strength here is not only that flexibility, but the knowledge base that's there that helps us realize what the end user really wants. I mean, when we did the Portland Center, we didn't have an end user. We had some people, higher up in the administration that said a lot of hand waving.
Build it.
Build something there in Portland that's going to do maybe this, and we were able to just kind of say, well, how, if we did this, would that work for you? Well, no, not quite. I mean, we at least gave them a platform to jump off of, because if we had gone to the design team and said, do this, we wouldn't have had that dialogue in the first place to kind of at least set the platform at a bar that was manageable for us. And what we ended up with has completely changed. I mean, they're using that space in a completely different way than they planned to in the first place, but it's been created in a flexible way, so we didn't have to go in and rip stuff out and start from scratch. Did you have a question for me?
Doug, hold on 1 second. Doug. One
Okay.
second. I want to pile on that, and I want to answer something you asked a moment ago. So I'm going to give these folks props. That the Portland job was done in less than a year. And when we stepped into that, now I've worked a lot with a lot of folks over the years, I was going, this is not going to happen. There's just no way. But I'll tell you what, when we got to that finish line, I was impressed with how they coordinated all this, and we got it done in the timeline. Robert, you were there at one point for like a week with us. But I wanted to touch on yours back there. You asked about renovation of old spaces. They've been given that task to take care of the historical quality of the buildings, right? These are historical buildings. And so when my team goes into rooms where we're doing things, we just don't start ripping the room apart. We realize that there's historic thing here. So we often will look to facility services, their trade groups, to say, hey, can we do this in this room? Can you do this in this room? We want to make sure that we're not defacing the value in the architecture of our buildings here. So, but when they're able to, they do a wonderful job of renovation.
Yeah.
Doug.
So putting you on the spot, evolution, your development as a project manager, when did you have your aha moment about, wow, technology is critical, important? Because when I went to my job 5 years ago, the most senior project manager just didn't care about technology at all. I didn't see it. Good thing for me, 2 major projects. She retired during both of them. And now I've got 2 people who went from capital or construction project to now they're all projects managers. And working with them has been a highlight of my 5 years now, to see their development and growth, and they teach me and I teach them, and we're, you know, going lock in the arm room. So when did it happen for both of you?
I'll tell you that, so I have been here for 10 years and I came from private practice. And so I was 15 years in a large architecture firm designing mostly medical and healthcare design, and but also had some opportunities to do some work at the Oregon Convention Center, and you know, some projects that had a lot of technical background. My second career was as a specialized laboratory and medical planner, where I was designing you know, like teaching laboratories, so that, you know, if you were wanting to be a nurse assistant or if you were wanting to be a dental assistant, I designed simulation labs. But this was before I came here. And the technology component on simulation labs, okay, I see some nodding heads. You've done some sim labs before. It's really high end. And so when I came here, it was just kind of second nature that you had to involve somebody from technology in a project very early on in the game. And I think some of those threads had already occurred, and we just really, I mean, I think the 3 of us were involved in a really strong wave at that period of time when those checkoffs at the ends, at the schematic design checkoffs, they were kind of falling to the wayside for a while. People weren't showing up from, you know, facility services, or, you know, because they weren't being listened to. And the changes that were being asked for weren't coming up in the drawings. And so I think that what we really pushed is, hey, if you do a checkoff, you know, and you tell me that I need to, you know, I can't put aluminum bus duct on this project, or what, you know, if you tell me that, then we're going to fight for it for you, because the long-term maintenance is really important. So I think it was just a back and forth relationship building session.
So for me, I guess being slightly younger in my career, mid-40s, it's always been, technology has always been a life I grew up with, right? Even with my ColecoVision in 1982 or whatever it was. But over the last, on campus, I got back onto campus in 2006 and built a cogen plant there. We had very little technology in that plant as far as AV stuff. And then the next project, and that's where I first met Dawn, was the Linus Pauling Science Center, which is our chemistry building on campus. And that was really the first real push of, okay, we're going to use this technology. It's not just cool and neat to have. And then, so that was 2012. We built the Student Union next to the MU, 2014. Technology was really, it started to be kind of a base need in a conference room for people who were doing professional things on a university campus, right? And then between then and now, it's filtered into the classroom use a lot more. And I don't know of a 17-year-old that would choose to go to a university or college that didn't have AV in some form or function within their teaching or their, you know, their learning classroom stuff. And so at this point, for anyone who is struggling getting a place at the table, AV is no longer this neat, cool thing that you have in the room that's fun to have. I mean, it's like bathrooms and drinking fountains in a university setting at this point, right?
Yes.
And if people are missing that point, then we should go back to 2020 and 2021 to see how some universities didn't fold because they were able to deliver content and do what they really want to do, is teach and learn and do research, right? It is an absolute essential piece of a university setting at this point. And there needs to be a mindset that I don't look at Don like he's asking for some special frosting on the cake, right? I'm putting in a 2-inch water line to the restroom, and I'm putting Don's conduit in, right? Those are just base facts of life anymore. Paying for the end pieces, that's a whole different world, and that's something that I don't have to deal with, the refresh cycle. But getting the building so that it has elevators to get to the upper floors, restrooms, I mean, like, it's a base thing at this point.
And when you guys go and ask for conduit and boxes, if that's all you get, it's never going to be cheaper than when the building is going up,
Yeah.
right? So if you're not sure, just ask for it. It's almost negligible
It's
to add it
absolutely,
per room.
yeah.
And so if you don't have your standards built just yet, but like Dustin said, AV is going to go in 99% of the rooms, right? Get that, put in, fight for that. And then you can run your wire later if you have to.
Thanks for bringing that one up. We talked about that at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about put a box on the wall and put a poster over it, put a picture over it. But we're not going to use it in a conference room. Do you know how many rooms? You've all done the same thing. You have a new building or a renovated building, and you'll be like, this looks like a conference room to me. Oh, no. We're just going to meet in here, and you're back a year later, and you're putting surface stuff up, which we can do, right? But it doesn't look as professional. And that's something that I've learned from this team here and what they do, because when they get down with the building, it's a professional building. And we've always done a very good job with what we do, but I want that same thing on our stamp. So as a team, we want it to look like this. This is OSU's brand. And when you walk in, even though this is the Alumni Center, we've had a light hand in down here. Not a lot, but we have a light hand down here. But a pleasure to work with these folks. What was our first project? I had a question. I blew away with Greg Strombeck, though. He was my first one. Question.
Okay, so from the AV side, how do you convince your facilities people or your capital projects people that AV is important? You actually seem to have a great relationship and understand those things. Like, in my experience, facilities and our architect do not care. Would rather it not be there. So.
Well, there's a couple groups that work together that I'm actually on a committee with. I meet quarterly, and that's space management. So within their team, there's their space management person. So there's another faction that doesn't work directly with them, but has a hand in what do we do with the space? How do we allocate the space? Is it properly used? That team with our registrar, they work hand in hand. And so we meet quarterly to talk about things. So I would say that relationship between those two teams, as the space management and registrar, that's the conduit right there. We're just facets of that. They're the project managers and architects for it. I'm just the AV guy, but my conduit is through the registrar. Theirs is through the space management. So that's really what it is. There's more intricacy than you can think of if you really look at it, your university. And like I said, early on, when John Gremmels and Lori Fulton were in charge of things, it was okay. They don't have an unlimited budget, but I would go to the university. We got money for new buildings. They never said no, you couldn't do it, but they would fund it. But then we were all like, why don't we just wrap that into this? And it wasn't even my idea. It was, I think, John Gremmels, it was his idea to wrap these general purpose registrar classrooms into the construction budget. Now, I can't come up and go, oh yeah, $80,000 a room. Why? She's gonna ask me why. What are you doing in that room? This is usually about 20 or 15. What are you doing? You know, we have to stay within their budget.
I wanted to add one thing on that. When I used to deal with a lot of architects, so I was a consultant at one point in my life, I would talk to them and go, you've drawn this beautiful space. If it doesn't sound or look well, it'll look just like your pictures, empty, with no people. Ooh. Is that what you want your legacy to be?
It seems like
I use that one.
Man, that's music.
Yeah, but what if you want to get hired again for the next job?
The sad part is,
Yeah.
I won that job because they're like, you are addressing a problem that we weren't thinking about. And that was much harder back then, like to convince them, but I'm like, look, you don't have to be an audiophile, but get a load of this. You don't have to know anything about acoustics, but when my mouth gets closer, it sounds different, right? Okay, so we've established you can hear. There are things we need to do to make this room good.
I might start with, can you show Like, oh, you didn't bring, because we weren't in the process soon enough, we spent X extra dollars, and we could have spent that money better if we had been brought in at this point. Show it as a add-on cost, try to get it put onto their budget, so to speak, right? Because it's at a university, where the money come from is apparently a big deal. So I've heard once or twice. And so, right, if you can show, I talk about it, this is the wrong way to talk about it because it's negative, but I talk about it as putting the pain in the right place. And when the pain is in the wrong place, it's not as efficient as it could be. And right, it's a negative way to talk about it. Someone please tell me how to say that in a positive way, because people are really positive, I guess. But can you show the extra, like the university spent this much extra because we had to add a floor core, and it's $5,000 during construction, but it's $12,000 after the fact, right? We could have saved $7,000 or whatever it is.
AV's like water lines. AV's like water, that's what I got. And t-shirts will be on the
Well, we'll have t-shirts in the lobby. You know, another thing that you might use as a conversation point. I was speaking at a conference a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about vibrant spaces, and how do you keep, you know, make sure that our campuses are still vital and vibrant. And I said, you know, y'all, and it was a group of architects, and I'm an architect, so just, you know, I'm just going to say, but I said, y'all are going to work really hard to design all these beautiful spaces, and until you get somebody there, it's not going to be vibrant or vital. It's going to be empty. And, you know, I used the argument about space utilization and efficiency in relationship to how we're using space because of remote work and finding ways to get people back into buildings. But technology is right up there with utilization. If you don't have technology designed into a space, nobody's going to go, you know, sit there. They can't charge their phones. They can't, you know, you can't use the space. And so I think if you also talk about utilization and making space more efficient and user friendly, I think technology is right up there.
Yeah, I think what Libby is saying is it's not you need AV, it's what do you need from your space to whatever group you're talking to. Oh, you want da-da-da? Great. Here's some AV things that would facilitate that, right? Because you're not coming up and saying AV is water, so you need a 1.2 millimeter wall on every wall in every room, right? We're not asking for that. But it'd be really great if there was the infrastructure to later throw in a TV, later add a projector, that kind of, right? We're starting small. And so part of it is what is their priorities, budgets, and constraints. Don knows Libby and Dustin's priorities, budgets, and constraints. Not all the details, but he knows where they're coming from. And so he knows how to help them with what they're trying to get done. That's part of being a good partner, right, in anything. So when you're trying to convince them, maybe start not by trying to convince them, but by saying, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? And then where AV makes sense, right, make those suggestions, because now you're not asking for stuff to add to their budget. You're trying to give them something to accomplish their program, right? To make their, I forgot the term already, PI, right? Whatever you call them in your facility, you're trying to help them get what they want. It just happens to be AV that's going to make it happen because it's water and they need it. But we could leave, you know, you leave that part to the end. What do they need? How can you give it to them?
So I think that my question maybe is for Libby. Whenever you're renovating old buildings, how do you account for the support for HVAC? Because whenever it's like really, really hot in the summertime, it could potentially affect the technology. And speaking from personal experience, it's almost unbearable to be in certain buildings at certain times. So I was wondering how that plays into certain aspects of it.
He's talking about Fairbanks.
Oh, and Bexel, yeah, well, Bexel. That was a budget constraint. But in general, and then I'll hand off to Dustin and let him finish this question. But in general, when we start a project with a goal in mind, there's a multiplier related to the program. So if there's a net square footage of 60,000 square feet, and if it's a lab building, you know, we'll multiply that by 1.5, or, you know, it's 50% additional space that you would have for mechanical space to support that building. Now, if your budget is set, then you would divide by that number and figure out how much net square footage you would get out of the building. If it's more like a student space, student-focused space, office space, administrative space, then my multiplier would go to a 1.65 or a 1.7. So it would be a different ratio, and you wouldn't need as much mechanical space. But it's oftentimes the balance between the budget and what the end user is asking for. And then as we start to make trade-offs, now the university was designed to be a 9-month institution, and we're not a 9-month institution anymore. We're now a 12-month institution, and climate change is real. Sorry, folks, gotta say it. And so, if we were to go to a semester-based system and we were gonna start classes in August or September, we'd be in a lot of trouble. And so, we've started to up our budgets because we are recognizing that historic renovation is necessary on this historic campus, and we have to design for greater ratio of mechanical space. Do you want to add?
It's any consolation, we're working in Corley Hall this summer. It's air conditioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a lot of times it's a budget thing, even though Brandon Charles.
And that's a monetary budget thing or a CFM budget thing? What kind of budget?
It's always monetary. I mean,
Okay.
I can make anything happen with the right amount of money on pretty much any project. But what Brandon Charles says, our chief sustainability officer on campus, is we're going to air condition our way out of this global warming thing. Kind of joking, but there's some truth to it, right? Like, we just need more of it, which is going to make the whole thing worse. But what we've done is, at the Quarterly project, we built a district utility plant which has 4,500 tons of chilled water that we distribute to 7 buildings. It's around 400,050 square feet of lab buildings, which are really hot. We're finding that is wildly efficient compared to what we were doing when we were chilling individual buildings off of single chillers in the building. We've also gone to a different variety, which is a magnetic levitating chiller that, I mean, it's like a third or a quarter of the energy output to get the same amount of cooling. But we also just have real constraints. The world's not flat, Corvallis isn't flat, and we don't have unlimited resources. One of the buildings that's hopefully going to start construction this summer, not to be mentioned, we don't have enough power. Like, the utility grid that PacifiCorp owns, the utility in the town, they don't have enough electricity for us. The Wong complex, they don't have enough electricity for us. They're bringing in about 8 megawatts of electricity all the way from Albany just to serve 2 major projects, the Wong complex and the Kelly district utility plant, which will serve a lot of buildings with that. So it's, again, we all do our best. We hope we do our best, but there's just some times when it's a no, we can't get there regardless of budget.
Yeah, and I think, so we've run over by about 10 minutes. I just want to say thank you, Libby and Dustin, for taking time to come visit us at our conference. It was really great to hear the conversation. I know this isn't the relationship you all have, per se, for various reasons, but it is possible to be at the table. It is possible to be a valued member of those larger projects, but it does take time, and it does take giving and work on your part. It's not just going up to them and asking for stuff. Don contributes labor, money, and not just expertise. He doesn't just show up with his wish list, right? He is a partner. He does some of the work. Few housekeeping things. Libby and Dustin are going to disappear sooner than Dawn. So if you want to talk to them, this is your moment. I didn't tell them I was going to say this, because they're going to walk out those doors, and then, I don't know, poof, they're pumpkins. Dawn will be here at least till tomorrow.
That's what it was. I figured it out.
You figured it out?
We worked on Strand Agriculture together.
Oh.
They renovated all. They moved all. We had classes on all 4 floors. They're on the first 2 now, which is nice. Not air conditioned. But my favorite story, real quick before we all leave, we're at the end of it. It was a seismic renovation. And Mark, our technical systems integrator, he's talking to the architect. He's like, so if we have an earthquake and the building falls down, do we get a refund?